Since the very inception of Krakoa, Mr. Sinister has lied in wait, bided his time, and now he's finally ready to strike. What happens when everything and everyone becomes sinister? Well, let's hop into the pages of Sins of Sinister issue number 1, the kickoff to a brand new X-Men crossover event, and find out what happens next together, shall we? Alrighty then, so this issue actually takes place after the events of the last 2 issues of Immortal X-Men. If you haven't checked those out, I'd recommend doing so because there's a lot of important info there. In this issue, though, we're treated to a wonderfully twisted recreation of the first panel of House of X, the big kickoff to this new era in X-Men, only now it's Mr. Sinister, welcoming corrupted versions of the X-Men out of their pods, and instead of saying, "To me, my X-Men," he says, "To me, my me's." Now, an important thing to know about this event is that we actually jump around in time a lot. We have year 0, year 5, and year 10. We see Nathaniel Essex after the fallout of his battle against the Quiet Council and the X-Men at the end of the Immortal X-Men book. He gets himself sentenced to life in the Krakoan pit for his last failed attempt to kill the other members of the Quiet Council and take control of Krakoa. Only here's the thing though, all of this seemed to be part of a much bigger plan for Sinister. Sinister may have been caught and the other members of the Quiet Council he killed resurrected, but we can see that Xavier, Emma, Hope, and Exodus were actually corrupted during the rebirth process. Because of that, they all have the same red diamond that we know to be the symbol of Essex and Sinister. Now, with more than half of the Krakoan Quiet Council under his control, Mr. Sinister goes out of his way to make sweeping reforms, but he has to make it not look like that anyone is under his sway just yet. Because of that, he stages a massive moral argument between Xavier and Emma Frost about what to do next. After these recent massive upheavals in Krakoan society, Sinister Xavier goes out of his way to say that what they really need to do as immortal beings is bring mankind closer and let them share in immortality. They've done it little by little, but now they need to actually kick in the turbos on it. After all, maybe if humanity can selfishly see their own gain in the betterment of mutant kind, maybe they'll finally actually do something about it. And one by one, Sinister Xavier is able to get everyone else on his side, even those who aren't under the sway of Mr. Sinister just yet. From there, we jump forward into the future where we check on in with crusading journalist Phil Urich, formerly of the Daily Bugle. You'll remember it was this guy who actually broke the story about mutant resurrection protocols, making him something of an expert. It would seem that in only a year, Krakoa rolled out brand new gene therapy for humans. Basically, they got a small taste of having their own X gene and their own chance at immortality, so naturally, a whole lot of people jumped at it. These unsuspecting people may have thought they may have been getting a little taste of mutantdom, but in reality, they were just getting a lot of Sinister pumped inside of them. Major political figures have already fallen under the sway of the Red Diamond, and while Urich goes out of his way to try and get J. Jonah Jameson to help him blow the whistle, unfortunately, affluent folk like Jameson are already drinking the Sinister Kool-Aid, and even that whole test kit that Urich thought would be the key to bringing down Sinister, yeah, it turns out Nathaniel created those to help weed out dissenters. But believe it or not, as horrible as this is, it's all just phase 1 of a much bigger, much nastier plan. While Sinister may be taking control systematically of all the mutants on Krakoa, the island itself is still very much alive, a thinking, feeling individual creature that refuses to go along with all of this evil, and because of that, Sinister Forge opts to give the island a laser lobotomy. Now, how the hell do the sinister mutants of Krakoa ever hope to cover up for such a big public display of force? Well, simple, they blame it on their enemies in Orchis, of course. In fact, Sinister is so good at spinning the whole thing, the Avengers and the rest of the assorted superhero community actually get behind the X-Men in taking out the mutant-hating group once and for all. Iron Man Tony Stark develops an amazingly high-tech virus that is able to cripple both Nimrod and Robo-Moira. Even Captain America himself gets duped by Cyclops, who says today the Earth's mightiest heroes are all officially honorary X-Men. All of this ends up setting off a much bigger domino effect as well. With mutant-kind's biggest adversary finally dealt with, Mr. Sinister finally feels safe enough to come back up from the pit and assume full control. The big question, of course, you might be asking is why all of this, why now, and why play such a long game? Well, the answer is Sinister always intended to take control of Krakoa ever since its original inception. You'll remember back during the events of the Immortal X-Men book, in a flashback story, we saw that Essex had always feared the singularity and the coming of machine life forms. Sinister figured the only way to defeat machine dominion is with his own type of sinister dominion. The big problem, though, though, was always Hope. Sinister tried his best to corrupt the mutant resurrection protocols, but Hope was so powerful and so good she basically stopped him without even knowing she was doing it. This is of course why Sinister tried 10 different times to try and murder Hope with the use of his Moira machine that allowed him to essentially create save states, wherein he could alter history, go back and try again in case something went wrong. And with the Hope problem finally solved, Orchis almost entirely smashed, and the entire Krakoan nation under his control, all Essex has to do now is sit back and enjoy his glorious 5-year plan, of which we get several snapshots. In that gap of time, Sinister is able to use Emma to set a honey trap for the King of Atlantis, Namor, killing him and resurrecting him as a Sinister before using that Sinister to go and kill Dr. Doom, who was of course also replaced with a clone thanks to the Stepford Cuckoos, who are now making backups mentally of everyone on Earth, not just mutants. The Eternals are next to fall, with Sinister using the Uranus superweapon to take all of them out. Even the Fantastic Four aren't safe, Ben Grimm making himself an unwitting pawn of Sinister's plan by going in for that mutant gene therapy to try and reverse his craggy exterior. Now that's not to say that there's no mutant resistance waiting for Sinister back on Krakoa. Storm of the Quiet Council finally can't take any more and admits that mutant kind has lost their way, which of course only serves to make Storm a bigger enemy of the Sinisters, who actually couldn't do much to bring her under their sway. As to curry favor with the Erico, mutant Storm had actually taken herself out of the resurrection protocols, which ended up actually being a very good move as it saved her. Evil Emma and evil Charles try and take control of her mind using their powers, only to discover that Storm had a contingency for that too, using some of the much more powerful Erico mutants to help build a psychic barrier around her mind for just such an occasion. Before Aurora can be fully swarmed by Sinisters too, she ends up getting teleported away by Destiny and Mystique, the other two members of the Quiet Council who had managed to sneak away before everything got really bad. Irene, you'll remember from those Immortal X-Men flashback issues, has actually been on to Nathaniel's bullshit for hundreds of years at least. In fact, she says to Storm what she'd been saying to Sinister all throughout the Kieron Gillen run: we must be on the same side. With Storm making her big exodus from Krakoa, there's no one left to stop Sinister's actions. He sends Shaw to hell to broker deals with magical entities, which in turn allow him to take out all of Asgard, including a fleeing Thor, who had just narrowly managed to survive an imploding Avengers team when Sinister activated Captain America as one of their own sleeper agents and forced him to try and take over America, only for the X-Men to break it up and become heroes. Mars is next to fall on the hit list, the Ericoan mutants doing everything they can to hold out, but it's ultimately not enough. At the 10-year mark, literally everything everywhere truly is Sinister. Essex even taking this time to step up his research, unleashing the first ever true first generation Chimera mutants, the ones that have been teased since all the way back in the beginning of the Hickman, Hawks, and Pox run. Here's the thing though, creating these Chimera mutants actually is incredibly toxic. He's polluting the entire eastern seaboard, and sick humans are going out of their way to try and seek more mutant gene therapy. In doing so, making them play even further into Sinister's hands. Hell, even Spider-Man has been replaced by a mutant. Yep, it truly seems like Sinister finally has everything he wanted, and it only took a decade. Only there's one problem now: you can't do all of this crazy villainous shit without incurring some repercussions. Sinister's actions out in space have actually made Earth public enemy #1 for the greater universe, meaning that they're probably gonna have to deal with the Kree and Shi'ar and the Phalanx and God only knows who else who are going to want to take Earth out to save their own skins. But that's not even the biggest problem. As always, Mr. Sinister's greatest foe isn't any hero, but it's himself and his own vanity. You see, all of these different Sinister clones who are embodying the other members of the Council, well, here's the thing, they're not really quite the hive mind that Essex had imagined. They have their own thoughts, feelings, and remnants of their old personalities, meaning that all the other Sinisters are starting to turn on original Sinister and having infighting about what to do next. Not that Essex is worried, he just chops this all up to a failed experiment. He'll just use his Moira circuit to restart time from his last save point and do it all over again, this time making sure that no other Sinister but him gets any bright ideas. Only here's the problem though, when he returns to his base of operations on Muir Island, yes, that's right, Sinister was operating out of Moira's old base, the last place anyone would think to look. He realizes much too late that his Moira clones are gone, meaning that someone everyone out there actively wanted to trap him in this current timeline as it is. And it's on that note right there the comic comes to an end, everyone. So that was Sins of Sinister issue number 1, and I gotta say this is probably one of the most high-concept X-Men stories we've seen probably since Hawks and Pox. I'm actually very positively reminded of the original Age of Apocalypse, right down to a bunch of the other X-Men books straight up just becoming new books to tie into this event. It also feels really rewarding too to see Sinister, who has been so awesome in this era of X-Men stories, finally spring his trap. Like, we all knew this was gonna happen eventually, but now that it actually has come, it's met all my expectations and then some. In fact, I kind of love the idea that it's Sinister who pushes Krakoa to be the worst version of itself and do a lot of the things that a lot of people in the book itself feared could potentially happen. And then the real cherry on top of everything is that Sinister could win, could pull off this amazing 10-year-long gambit and yet still not actually win because he can't stop getting in his own way, both literally and figuratively. I also love the idea too that they've set up Storm and Mystique and Destiny as kind of these last great hopes for mutant kind. Normally in events like these, that's a role that's reserved for like Wolverine or Cyclops or Jean. It's nice to see them actually share the love for once. There's also a nice mystery baked into this bigger story too, and that is who has the most to gain from the universe staying the way it is now. And could it potentially have anything to do with Dr. Stasis or Orbis Stellaris, those other Mr. Sinister clones with the other suits on their head that are running around causing trouble? Overall, I thought this was a stellar start, and I'm really interested to see where this story is going to go from here. Overall, I'd give it a much-deserved 8.5 out of 10.
Hey there everyone, Kate Joel again, and I just want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It means a lot to me. And hey, if you enjoyed the book I covered in this issue and want some comics of your own, might I recommend Book Depository? It's my #1 place for shopping for comic book trades. You get a great price, and if you use my link down in the description, you'll actually be helping me out at the same time. You get something, I get something, everybody wins, right? So until next time everyone, I've been Joel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.